status of the farmer. They have to be educated and paid properly for their labor. And right now the tendency is, oh, you farmer, why is it so expensive? Why is the food so expensive? The prices are pushed down all the time. If you look at the trend in food prices, except the last few years, that's food price, that's not what the farmer gets, have been going down. So again, we need to think about this much more seriously on how can we solve this problem as we move forward. And one thing I want to also point here is about the quantity of food we grow and what do we do with it. By the time we're wasting average between 40 and 50%, depending where you look at in the world, again, that shows that food is too cheap. People wouldn't throw away or waste in processing, in post-harvest, or after a retail, so much food if it were more expensive. We don't throw gold down the sink or into the garbage. And I think food is equal to gold. I mean, it's the basis of our life. So how can we actually deal with this? And anyone who has seen some of the movies out there, Taste the Waste and all this, it is shocking. Absolutely shocking what we do with our food, and that's actually a lack of respect for the farmers who are working day and night to produce this food, and we just throw it away. And our agriculture is actually creating huge problems. So we can see here the red areas being the biodiversity, the nitrogen pollution we do, and climate change are way, way beyond the green line there where we should be. Others, being it acidification of the ocean, ozone depletion, land system changes, again, are all moving in the wrong direction. So here, again, we need to really move in a different direction. So that's so far. We'll come back a little bit later for the discussion. Thank you.
Take a couple of questions. All right, so it's going to be prepared, right? Any questions for Hans? Yes, please.
What's the response of the government to the Ashton report? Was from the governments inside, including the Indian government? And what's the status of that report vis-a-vis all the government policy?
So the report actually has raised a lot of hopes in the NGO community, civil society groups. Very few governments actually did something about it. I can say at least that the Swiss government, my own country, take note of it, and they are planning now in a Swiss Agriculture 2035, where they actually take cues in the report on rearranging their agricultural policies. But that's actually the only one I know who have actively used it. Another use of the report was made in Africa, where the African Union has, at the head of state level, started a program on ecological organic agriculture, endorsed and promoted by head of states in Africa. So that's not small beans, and it goes back to an effort where FAO was very much involved, the Natural Resource Department, to promote both the report and basically turn around at least some parts of what is being done in agriculture policy. But that's the only one. From the 59 countries who signed, basically no sign. India is one of them where the report has been signed, endorsed, for all its value, nothing happened.
As the problem is, most of the agricultural universities are completely based on what America teaches, unfortunately.
Exactly, and you know, we cannot transfer agriculture from one place to the other. It is very localized. Therefore, we actually said that this report, one thing which was supposed to be done, and I will talk at the end about this, there were supposed to be national assessments following the global and regional, because policies cannot be made on the basis of a regional report. So the idea was, now we have trained more than 400 people around the world, they're supposed to do national assessment. Again, nothing.
Thank you. We have one more question over here.
Do you include the animal farm industry or the livestock industry in agriculture or food security? And if you do, to what extent do you think it is responsible for climate change problem, for the food insecurity problem? Why is so much of food grain being fed to the pigs and other cattle? And 40,000 children dying of starvation every day. So how do you link this?
Okay, so first of all, in the report, we have made the point that animals out of the factory back onto the farm. That's the one thing we say. Because we cannot continue to have these feedlots where we have animals packed into on top of each other, fed the wrong food, in most places, just for our convenience or maybe cheap meat. And we know that about 60% I think of the grain is actually fed to animals. Now again, for chicken you almost have to, others we can discuss what is appropriate. But I think, so we have, and again I'll talk about this later too, if the consumer, or the pattern of consumption doesn't change, we cannot change agriculture. So consumers will have a very big role in changing what's happening on the farm. If people want cheap food, farmers will go cut corners. If people want more meat, for whatever reason, somebody will have to produce it. And I think that, again, policy has to come to say, we cannot afford to put so much grain into animal because of the conversion factor is very low, which means we need more land than we actually have, more water than we have. So there has to be a major change too. I mean, this is clear. Now that children die because they have no food, you've seen how many calories do we have? Just what we waste could actually nourish a lot of those people and the children. So I think we have another problem of access, not only a problem of production. And I think that's an important factor also because in the report we say we need to support more smallholder and family farms because these are a big employer. Now if you have larger and larger farms, fewer and fewer people making money, where do they go to the cities, join the ranks of the poor, and then cry for food. I mean, this is, so the trend of the population of the landscape has to change also. That we just accept the fact that everybody goes from the rural areas into the urban areas. It doesn't have to be. We can decide what we want. Now, are we ready for it or not? This is the question.
Thank you very much, Hans. And now I'd like to ask Doug to come up.
Thank you, Jack. And I want to thank the organizers and the funders of this conference. It's an honor for me to be here. It's been a great honor and pleasure to meet my colleagues from India. They're doing tremendous work. And what I wanted to bring here was a view from the United States, not because what we do is or isn't useful or adaptable to India. You, as everybody understands, will make your own choices as that should be. But we do have a long experience with genetic engineering, probably the longest. We grow more genetically engineered crops than any country in the world. We're kind of the origin of genetic engineering and genetically engineered crops. And so we have some experience that I think we can share. What I'm going to focus on here, although we do a lot of other work as well, is the contribution, and it was one of the questions earlier, of genetic engineering to productivity in the United States. And I think the reason this is important, because our agriculture in many ways differs from that of India, is that in the United States we're comparing a number of different types of technologies and production methods. So we are a crucible where these methods can be compared to an extent where that may not be happening in other parts of the world. So we can then see and sort out to some extent how the different approaches to agriculture stack up in terms of contributing to productivity. And of course, as others have pointed out, we have growing challenges. Distribution and poverty are the big issues, but we can't ignore the issue of productivity as well. More mouths to feed. Everybody knows the figures, probably 9 billion people by mid-century. And we know the other issues as well. The pollution, as other people have said, that industrial agriculture causes dead zones, apoxic zones in our coastal waters that are killing fish and seafood. The other pollution that agriculture causes, the consumption of meat, as Hans pointed out, which is inefficient and is going up. All of these things are contributing to the challenges that we have. So in the U.S. and really around the world, we really have, and this is an important point, only a couple genes that have been successful so far. So the industry really started in the mid-'80s, commercialized its first crops in the mid-'90s, and for all of that effort and billions of dollars that have been invested, it has really only been successful at a handful of genes and traits. a couple different insect-resistant traits called BT that come from a soil microorganism, and herbicide tolerance or herbicide resistance. And really, the only successful one has been for Roundup or glyphosate herbicide. So that's important to keep in mind. The industry has had a tremendous effort in producing all kinds of genetically engineered traits, and it's not been successful in any but these so far. So how have they been doing in the U.S.? What we did, and I think this is an important point to understand, is teased out the contribution through review and analysis of peer-reviewed studies that were done in the U.S. of the contribution of the gene and what it does compared to all the other things that can contribute to an increase in productivity. So when you see claims in India or elsewhere about increasing productivity of cotton or any other crop, you have to ask what is actually contributing to that. When somebody says BT cotton is the cause of increased yield, you also have to consider whether it's really changes in management practices or changes in the genetics of the crop, because these single genes are being put into crops that consist of several tens of thousands of genes that have been bred and worked on by farmers for millennia. And the vast majority of the traits in those crops and the quality of those crops come from those genes. Those single genes that are being added are a small part of the picture. So by doing the right kind of science, you can tease out the contribution of the genes. So that's a very important point to keep in mind methodologically. I won't go into exactly how that's done, but that's what we do. So what does that all add up to? There are two types of BT traits. When we looked at maize and soybean, because those are the two by far biggest acreage crops in the U.S. and the most important ones for genetic engineering. So the BT insect-resistant trait for the two major pests doing this analysis contributes about 3 to 4% of yield gain over the time of commercialization of these crops over about a 16-year period. We did not find any yield advantage for herbicide-tolerant corn. And during this period, what's important to remember, and this is what's left out of most analyses as well, productivity increased in maize about 28% over that 16-year period. So what does that mean? That means that the contribution of genetic engineering to yield increase is only about 14%. 86% of that yield increase came from conventional breeding and improved, in some ways, improved farming methods. So a very small part of the yield increase has been contributed to, or yield prevention of yield loss is what it really is, was contributed by the BT genes. And this is a more recent study just that really kind of confirms the results we had. This just came out this year by some agricultural economists in the U.S. And when we look CB and RW over to the left are corn, borer, rootworm, the two major pests of corn. And what this basically adds up to is in their analysis about a 5% yield gain, so it's very similar to our figures. And they found about a 2% yield, additional yield gain from herbicide tolerance, and therefore about a 25% contribution to the yield improvement of maize over this period of time. And if you factor in the last couple of years since these studies have done, probably more like only 20%. So again, even by their analysis, about 80%, 75-80% of the yield improvement of maize in the U.S. has been attributed to conventional breeding and agronomy, not genetic engineering. And we have to remember that there are very good non-insecticide alternatives to BT corn. So one of the traits, the BT traits, is for corn rootworm, one of the two most important insect pests for corn in the U.S. We now have, although it has not been commercialized because of the monopoly of these large seed companies that are not interested in this, we now have good conventionally bred corn rootworm traits that could be used by farmers instead of the BT trait. So that's another important point. In general, conventional breeding is very productive. We found that in organic production, 18-fold fewer corn borer eggs, and that, again, one of the two major pests, are laid in organic farms. And importantly, when you increase the complexity of corn, so in the U.S., corn is grown either corn year after year after year, much like cotton is often unfortunately grown in India, or corn and soybean back and forth. And that is not a very ecologically sound system. It's not what organic systems are other. And we know that simply by increasing that rotation, including some additional crops, the second pest that's very important. Rootworm is virtually not a pest. So this so-called billion-dollar pest in the U.S. basically disappears when you do sensible ecological-based farming. And so there are other real solutions. And this again goes to the point about pollution, because we also have to remember that the pollution impacts our productivity, as Hans was saying, both through climate change, impacting our coastal waters and fisheries, and so forth. So for example, complex crop rotations used in organic farming and other sustainable farming and cover crops keep the soil from eroding. We know it can reduce nitrogen pollution, which again causes dead zones by 40 to 70%. This is all from the peer-reviewed literature in very good journals. Reduces erosion, and adds more stable nitrogen to the soil. Sequesters carbon, makes the soil more fertile. Pulls carbon, the greenhouse gas, out of the air. Improves soil quality so it can hold more water. In the U.S. Midwest, where corn is grown, we know that this very fertile soil has lost 50 to 70% of its carbon, of its fertility. And that can be put back, and that will hold more water for drought outlets. And it can increase yield. So these are, we know how to do this, but policies and so on in the U.S. and elsewhere are preventing these things from happening. Soybeans, I'll go through more quickly, a similar story, no increase in yield. This may have changed a little bit because the traits, the HD traits are changing, but we also have to weigh this, and I'll get into this, against the losses that are probably occurring because of the epidemic of resistant weeds that are now happening in the U.S. So soybean yields in that 16-year period went up about 16%, and probably very little of that came from Roundup Ready herbicide trait. So I wanted to talk about that complexity a little bit. This is work done at Iowa State University, again, peer-reviewed work. Again, that 4-year crop rotation, so the kinds of things that would be done in organic systems, when you compare the GE column to the non-GE, you can see there's virtually no difference in the productivity. So when you have these more complex systems, genetic engineering contributes virtually nothing. It doesn't add anything. So about a 2% yield advantage. And when you look at the overall advantage of GE, it's less, it's really not even significant, about 0.5%. A similar story for the soybeans, but even more impressive. A 14-year yield advantage for the 4-year, then the complex organic type non-GE soybeans, compared to the simple, typical industrial 2-year soybean corn rotation that uses genetic engineering. So the non-genetic engineering, more complex system has a 14% yield advantage in this ongoing complex trial in our Midwest. Oops, sorry. And I think importantly, the net returns to labor, to the farmers, and to land are about 12% higher, because more of the profit is, there's less expensive inputs, less non-renewable inputs, expensive inputs like fertilizers and water and so on that are needed by these more complex systems. And so more of it goes to the farmer. And so the farmers have in this system a net 12% higher return than in the simple industrial system. So I want to get into a problem. This was also brought up, pesticide use, and it's often said that these crops reduce pesticide use. But what we have, because these systems are so simple and ecologically unsound, is that the traits are being overcome, and they're being overcome in a way that greatly outstrips whatever happened before. So you will hear arguments that yes, weed resistance has happened before, yes it has, insect resistance has happened, that's true. But in this system it's happening to a much greater extent, much more rapidly, much more extensively, having much bigger impacts, to the extent that our National Academy of Sciences called an emergency of essentially Weed Summit in March to try to address this issue because it's so threatening to farmers in the United States. So this is one of these resistant weeds. Horseweed can grow 10 feet tall, produce several 100,000 wind-borne seeds in a year, and spread like crazy. This is a minimum estimate, 10 to 15 million acres infested with this and other resistant weeds. It's probably more like 20 to 40 or 50 million acres, according to my discussions with weed scientists. And unlike what is usually said, the cumulative increase in pesticide use, when you look at the huge increase in herbicides offsetting the small reduction in insecticides, according to the work of Chuck Benbrook, through 2008 is about 383 million pounds. And just to give you some idea of the impact of these weeds, this is Stanley Culpepper. He's one of our professor at the University of Georgia. He's standing in a field of resistant pigweed, one of the worst of these, that's literally putting cotton farmers out of business in our Southwest. They're going back to hand hoeing because they have no good options to keep in business. And that's very expensive. That labor is very expensive in the U.S. So he's looking pretty unhappy. And as he has said, other experts have compared Palmer's amaranth, this particular weed, could be the worst threat to cotton since the boll weevil. And those of you that don't know U.S. agriculture, the boll weevil is an iconic pest, the worst pest ever in cotton in the U.S. And I just want to show you, this is cotton. That's the white bolls. This is the weed. Insect resistance has not yet been as much of a problem, but again, these simple systems are driving insect resistance. This is a adult horn rootworm, one of the two major pests. So insecticide use is a bit lower now. Resistance is developing again. It's rapidly growing. We also know that there's increased secondary pests that are happening in India and China especially. These pests are not only attacking corn, they're moving, in the case of China, they're not only attacking BT cotton, but that's acting as an incubator for these pests, and then they're moving into fruit vegetable crops and attacking them. And so both of these phenomena are likely to eventually lead to increased pesticide use. We've seen that over and over again, unless we get away from these simple systems that the industry is pushing, because that's where the GD crops fit into this industrial agriculture model, which is currently very productive, but again has all of these problems. Drought tolerance. Drought is one of the biggest ways that we lose productivity around the world. Monsanto, you may have heard, just came out with a so-called drought-tolerant corn, the first drought-tolerant trait. So we have analyzed this in a new report. They call it Drought Guard. So what does it actually do? Well, we don't have enough data to be confident, but based on Monsanto's own data, if you look at the maybe 6% reduction only under moderate drought, it may give a little advantage in more severe drought, but that's where it's most effective. And you add up where moderate drought happens in the U.S., where it's expected, and you do the math, it comes out to a little over a 1% yield increase. By contrast, and this is work by Bruce Babcock's lab, one of the best agricultural economists in Iowa State in our country. He did a historical analysis, and what he found is that breeding and around probably mostly breeding have increased since 1980 drought tolerance in maize by about 1% per year. So this is about the equivalent of 1 year of drought tolerance increase. So not very impressive. And because it takes 10 to 15 years to develop one of these engineered crops, it's a myth that these are developed more quickly. It takes just as long or longer to develop engineered crops as conventional breeding. So if you do the math again, so far breeding is about 10, probably to 15-fold faster at developing drought tolerance so far than genetic engineering. And we also know that breeding is very successful in many other crops that genetic engineering is not even approaching. Pearl millet, sorghum, cassava, wheat, rice, lots of types of maize. And so, again, breeding is greatly outperforming genetic engineering, and we think will continue to. So my conclusions here are breeding and animal ecology outperform GE. I didn't get into this, and I think Walter will a little bit, but we know we have a huge, through genetic studies over the last couple decades, a huge untapped genetic potential within the crops, within the diversity. You've heard about the many varieties of brinjal. That holds tremendous trait value and genetic diversity that can be used in breeding. That's true of virtually all crops if we take care of them, if we take care of the seed. And I might add that we also know that genetic engineering costs, at least, this is an industry's own study, $140 million more to develop a trait. And we know that breeding costs about $1 million. So there's also a huge cost effectiveness. And we know genetic engineering faces huge challenges with more complex traits like yield and drought. I haven't had time to get into why. I can do that if you have any questions. But the current traits like BT are the low-hanging fruit. They're the easy ones. And these other traits, to make them actually work successfully, are going to be a lot more difficult. And yes, maybe the technology will advance, but it's really an open question as to how well we're going to be able to address those challenges. So our conclusion is we need to really put our money where we can get the most bang for the buck, so to speak, into improved ecological agriculture and conventional breeding, which will continue to outstrip genetic engineering. I think finally we need to remember, because an argument is often made that we need all of these tools because of these challenges. Well, there is no evidence to suggest that genetic engineering is needed. We don't really know well in the future what's going to happen, but that claim is without any basis. What we do know is that these other technologies are much more effective, much more cost effective, better for farmers, they save resources and so on. So we know also that there are potential trade-offs. We don't have infinite budgets for research, for extension and so on. So a dollar put into genetic engineering is a dollar that's not going to be put into breeding or agroecology. So we have to make intelligent choices based on our best information about where we put our research dollars. And all of this is not to say that genetic engineering, properly regulated, which isn't publicly controlled and so on, could make some contributions. It probably can make some contributions. The question is, that does not mean it's needed. And so I think we really need to be intelligent about using these other scientifically sophisticated technologies and methods going forward. So, thank you.
Two quick questions for Doug.
Yes. Somebody should get a microphone.
Yes. This is related to your background and the presentation you made. What is the role of the regulator on this? I mean, contamination is there
In the United States?
here.
Yes. In the United States, the regulatory system does not make decisions about benefits very much, really. It's supposed to be about risk. And that, I think that's a mistake, because we really don't do an analysis of comparing one technology to another. There is one law that can allow us to do that, which is properly utilized. And what you should know anyway is that the risk assessment process in the U.S. counter to claims, and I was an official advisor to the Food and Drug Administration, the main agency that assess risks for food risks in the U.S. And I was an employee, I worked for as a scientist with our EPA, which looks at some of the food safety risks and environmental risks for pesticide use in plants like BT. From my perspective, it is a very weak regulatory system. So in a nutshell, our Food and Drug Administration, contrary to other claims, does not approve the safety of these crops. It does a review under part of our law that's called generally recognized as safe. It's a voluntary process. And there are no detailed guidance for the industry on what tests are required to make sure it's safe. You've heard about long-term and short-term studies. There's no term studies. There's no requirement for animal testing or anything else. Now, they sometimes been done, but there's no requirement for it in the FDA. It's a completely industry-driven process. And at the end of this process, what the FDA does is send a letter to the company that says, and not exactly quoted, but pretty close, we remind you, the company, that you have claimed that this crop is safe. We've reviewed your summary of your data, so the company summarizes the data in a nice neat form, doesn't even see the raw data. We remind you that you have said that this crop is safe. We have no further questions at this time. And we remind you that it's your responsibility, Monsanto and Oxygen, for the complaint, to ensure that this crop is safe. That's our essential safety, food safety review. I won't go into the environmental review. It's not very robust. It's important to understand.
Any more questions? Yeah, one more question. Yeah. I have to toss between two, but I will give, excuse me, Dr. Penton, please. I'll come back to you. I'll come back.
Is there a problem in US you are facing in getting the regulators to change their mind? Are they sold out, or
I try to be.
Scientifically good enough? I mean, what's the problem?
No, I think we have good scientists. I want to be a little tactful. You know, you have to look at a couple of things, I think. One is the history of our regulations. So when these most of these regulations were being put in place, they were under federal administrations, presidential, executive branch administrations, that were not very favorable to regulations in general. And there was a revolving door process where people literally from the industry, such as Monsanto, went to the FDA, made the regulations, went back to Monsanto and so forth. And this has happened when I was at EPA as well. Our assistant administrator in our Office of Pesticide Program went to Monsanto after her job. She probably knew she was going to Monsanto or something, or at least was counting on it. So that's one, I think, influence. Yes, money talks.
And people have no say.
Well, you have say through your elected officials, but I think the other piece is that we are we're pushing against, we're a technophilic culture. We tend to like new gadgets and new technologies, kind of, I think, sometimes somewhat uncritically. And I think it's important to understand that agroecology is a very sophisticated science. Breeding is just changing. It's not the same breeding. I mean, there is some very good breeding that was done many years ago, but it's also advanced. But this has been identified as an exportable technology. And if you look at the discussions about where jobs are going to come from in America, it's all about new technologies, the knowledge-based, what they call knowledge-based economy. And we are a leader in this. We try to export it. So I think there's a lot of internal politics and internal economics that are driving this. So that's my opinion. I mean,
Last question, please. Yeah, please.
What would be the proportion of funds companies like Monsanto put into agriculture research and genetic engineering research? And also, what is the modus operandi of their lobbyists deciding U.S. Agriculture Department's policies and also to some extent international agriculture trade negotiations?
Yes. Well, Monsanto is the biggest agricultural lobbyist outside of the tobacco industry in the United States. So they spend about, depending on the year, $7 to $10 million a year just lobbying and opposing laws like the labeling law. They're the biggest funder of the anti-labeling law, anti-GMO labeling law that put out in California. They've spent about $7 to $10 million to oppose that law. So that million, right? Yes. Yeah, I don't want to overstate, but they spend a lot of money on this. I was once in a meeting where they accused us of spending too much. We have. The amount they spend in lobbying in 1 year is bigger than our entire annual budget for our whole organization. So that was a little fatuous. But so they are lobbying actively all over the world, and they push the U.S. government to do the same. So I think it has a big influence. That wasn't your whole question?
Research, R&D.
Oh yes. Well, this is another big problem because Monsanto and these other companies are now funding research in our land-grant colleges and leveraging that research. So we had, in 2009, 26 of our agricultural entomologists write a letter to our Environmental Protection Agency complaining that they could not get access to do the research they needed on genetically engineered crops because of the intellectual property and patenting laws. So this is a huge problem, and so it's affecting research. But what was really telling about that is those 26, except for one or two of the more senior people, those 26 entomologists requested that their names not be revealed, that they remain anonymous because they were afraid of their careers being in jeopardy and losing research funding. And if you don't think that influences and silences scientists and has an influence on the science community in the U.S., I have a bridge in New York or something.
I think I already got that. Thank you. There's two points that I'd like to bring home to us right now that Doug has raised. First of all, there's no evidence that adoption of GE crops in the agro-ecosystem that is the oldest adopter of GE crops, one of the largest in the world, and is currently the largest GE producer. There's no evidence whatsoever of a reduction in pesticide use in that system, despite the fact that these GE crops are specifically about pesticide traits. And secondly, I think it's very important that we realize that so far at least, genetic engineering has been one of those plasters for a technological system that has other flaws. It's an attempt to make up or address the systems of what's going wrong in the industrial agricultural system. The best comparison is therefore not conventional agriculture versus GE in conventional agriculture. The best comparison is industrial agriculture versus other science-based alternatives like agroecology. And that certainly will dominate the second part of our presentations. Right now, what I want to do is give you a short vignette. Like I said, the United States is the oldest and biggest adopter of GE technology. And corn is the icon crop of the United States. What you can see in this slide is that the corn agro-ecosystem in the US is now almost exclusively genetically engineered. And that transition occurred in the beginning of this century. Now, if genetic engineering were also contributing significantly to yields, what we would expect is that the US would be outpacing other equally sophisticated and mature industrial agro-ecosystems in the world. So we did a comparison between the US corn agro-ecosystem and Western Europe, the Western European corn agro-ecosystem. And there is 0% GMO in this basket of countries at a comparable latitude with comparable access to the sophisticated breeding and mechanization. And what we find from 1961 to the year 2012 is no difference in yields between Western Europe and the United States, except possibly now because of the drought. The US is the brown line. When we do trend lines between Western Europe and the United States, and remember, I'm not defending Western Europe. I think they're terrible, and I can say that because I'm from New Zealand. They're just as horribly industrial as the US. The difference here is that they haven't gone GM. When we look at the trend lines, the blue line is the trend line yield line for Western Europe. The brown line is the trend line for the United States. Europe has been outproducing the US since 1985. It's not statistically significant, but its trend line continues to outpace. And this trend line will get even better when we take into account 2011 and 2012 data, which is projected to be even better for Western Europe, but we only have the numbers so far for the United States. So Europe is doing better, or at least as bad as the United States without GM. And we sometimes think that all of this is about genes. It's not just about genes. And when it is about genes, it isn't about a gene. It's about a combination of genotype and management. And what this tells us is that the management package available to Western Europe is at least as good as the combination of GE traits and management packages available in the United States. We can do the same thing for Canada. Canada went to effectively 100% GM rapeseed, what they call canola, in the beginning of this century. Now, Europe has always been better than Canada at making rapeseed. So its yields have always been higher. This is the beginning, this is the end of the non-GM era. And you can see Western Europe was outproducing Canada by a pretty good margin. Now Canada's 100% GM. Not only is Europe still outproducing Canada, but the amount per hectare that it's outproducing Canada has significantly increased over this period, and the trend lines suggest that it will continue into the future to outproduce Canada. So the introduction of GM agriculture in Canada has not only not significantly increased its yield potential, it's actually decreased the growth in yield relative to the non-GM agro-ecosystems of Europe. Now what I would like to do is, if there's any questions on that, take one question and then give us all a 10-minute break. Okay? So there's a question here in the front.
Your analysis of comparing canola from Western Europe with Canada's corn. In Canada, it's a summer crop, short duration, mostly in the prairies where it is affected by drought and other things. While we all know what kind of nice climate is there in Western Europe, and it's almost 9 to 10 month crop. So comparing a 9-month crop in productivity with a crop which is erroneous. I'm sorry. It is possible that European scientists are doing very good in selecting better breeds, they're utilizing germplasm better than Canadian scientists. That is possible. But to compare the two is, I'm sorry, I don't believe that we should make a comparison.
No need to apologize. Let me make this point a little bit clearer. The issue isn't whether Canada will ever make as much rapeseed per hectare as Western Europe. The point is that without GM, the European yields are increasing faster than the Canadian yields are per hectare with GM. It's not that I'm expecting Canada to make more rapeseed. I would expect them, though, to be improving both because of their breeding choices and GM. But they are not advancing as quickly as even a non-GM may produce. All right, well, thank you very much. We can return to that, of course. I'm happy to learn that I'm wrong about rapeseed. But for now, what I would like to invite you to do is have a 10-minute break, and please return for the second half.